What's up guys, it's MTG Matt for you, and today we're going to be looking at the final spoilers from Kaldheim from the last 2 days. Yes, we made it through the whole Kaldheim spoiler season, so all the cards are there right now. And we only have to wait 8 more days for the expansion. I'm super excited, so let's take a look at the last cards here and rank them accordingly. Starting with Birgi, God of Storytelling. It's a red dual model god. It's a 3 mana 3/3 in red, and it says whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end, and creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. Okay, and the other side is Hornfell, Horn of Bounty, 5 mana legendary artifact, which says discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library, you may play those cards this turn. So this is a big one. This got people talking because the god side is pretty crazy. You know, adding red mana every time you cast a spell is sounds just really nuts. And I would like to compare this card with Runaway Steam King, which we had in standard for a while, which was a 2 mana 1/1 elemental, which said whenever you cast a spell, if Runaway Steamkin has fewer than 3 1/1 counters on it, put a 1/1 counter on Runaway Steamkin, and then had the activated ability of remove 3 1/1 counters from Runaway Steamkin at triple red. So basically, Runaway Steamkin would also, in a way, give you 1 red mana every time you cast a spell. And then once it had 3 1/1 counters, you could actually use that mana. So Birgi is similar in a way, except you get the mana right away, right? And then you can also boast twice. Now, what do I think about this card for standard? I think this card could have 2 homes. One would be a Izzet Spellslinger deck, which wants to cast like small cantrippy spells, like orbs, to maybe pump up your, is it called Spirit Dragon or Sprite Dragon? Or use pump spells. And this way just, you know, keep getting mana back and be able to draw cards, draw through a deck, etc. And this way just get a lot of resources and get a lot of value. That would be one home, but like, is a Spellsling is not really a deck right now. Not at all, actually. And which means I think you could experiment with this card in a mono red aggro deck. Now the 3-drop slot is pretty crowded in a way that you can play a Bone Crusher Giant, you can also play your Annex, but yeah, you know, adding red mana every time you cast a spell can enable you to really get more damage through fast. So maybe this card in a way enables a red deck where you can use more direct burn spell decks, you know, for direct damage to your face, because in a way, it also says that if you play this in a red deck, all your spells cost 1 less, right? So that's a big deal. And, well, creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. Probably not that relevant at all, actually. But it's just a nice bonus, which might be relevant occasionally. And the other reason I think this could be experimented with in mono red aggro is because of the other side. So, you know, as a red aggro deck, you always struggle with resources. You run out of resources, and if you haven't killed your opponent by then, you're in big trouble. However, Hornfell, Horn of Bounty as a 5-drop can help you with that. You're drawing a card every turn, and you can discard that card to get 2 other cards, right? So you can discard your lands and just get more resources. And I think maybe because of this flexibility, Birgi could see some experimentation in mono red aggro. I think this is going to be the main home for that. For other decks, I think for Gruul aggro doesn't really make sense, does it? I mean, it also gives you, like, Gruul aggro at least, you could argue has access to more mana, theoretically, because it's in green and, you know, it has great henges and so on. So it could even use, utilize the Hornfell Horn of Bounty even better. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be an experiment in like red aggro decks mainly. And I think for a standard, this might see rare play. At max, tier 3 play. I don't think this is going to be more, but it's just that it competes with so many other stuff in like the right aggro decks at the free drop slot. And then it's just it's just a free, like it doesn't do anything the turn it comes down if you play it directly in turn 3. So I could see this like tier 3 play. I don't know. I think this is like tier 3, tier 4. My gut feeling is telling me it's actually tier 4. I think this is going to see rare play, but not a lot of play necessarily. And you know, if you experiment with this in red aggro and you find some success, then this can definitely climb up the ladder here. But for the time being, I would just put it at tier 4, probably. Something like that, yeah, tier 4. Alright, next I've got Dream Devourer, 2 mana 0/3 Demon Cleric in black. Each non-land card in your hand without Foretell has Foretell. Its Foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. And it says when you have a Foretell card, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Now, first of all, this effect seems really crazy, right? Because it gives all cards out there Foretell, all non-land cards. And in a way, this is ramp, right? So because you can pay 2 in advance and then play big stuff earlier. And right now in standard, one deck that comes to mind is, for example, like a mono black control deck with Ugin as the top end. And this card allows you to play Ugin on turns like with 6 mana instead of 8 mana, which might be relevant, but at the end of the day, at 2 mana, you rather have another removal spell. So let me just say this about this card. The implications of this card are interesting also for all cards to come, because maybe there is a card out there in the future or even right now in standard that I haven't thought of. That has big benefit when you cast it for 2 less than you cast it earlier. And I don't know, I mean, if you were to play something like Esper Control, play 2 Dream Devourer, play a turn 3, you foretell your Dream Trawler, and then at turn 4, Dream Trawler is pretty nuts. But this is also theoretic, and I think you'd rather just have, you know, just have another removal spell at 2 mana. So there might be some crazy advantage with this card, with a certain card you want to foretell, but I don't see it right now. And because of that, I'm saying this is going to see 0 playing constructed. Next I've got Righteous Valkyrie. We've already talked about this card once, but now it's officially spoiled. Let's talk about it one more time. 3 mana 2/4 Angel Cleric with flying, which says whenever another Angel Cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. And as long as you have at least 7 life more than your starting life total, creatures you control get +2/+2. Now this is a big one, simply because this fits right into the mono-white life gain deck. And the last time I looked at Aetherhub, mono-white life gain was actually at the top of the meta right now. It's even more popular than mono-red aggro. And this fits right in there, right? Mono-white life gain, you want to gain life, you want to get to 27 life anyway because of your cleric guy that produces angels. And well, this helps you because angels or clerics entering the battlefield gives you life. Right now in the mono-white life gain deck, there aren't too many angels or clerics, but you might want to adjust this deck a bit with the new cards to probably put in more angels, I would say. And then this helps you get to 27 life fast, and then you get a +2/+2 anthem, which applies to all creatures, so also to itself, which is huge. And yeah, this card just seems really powerful. You can also play this in clerics decks, which also want to gain life. So where do I put this card? Well, for me, this is at least a tier 2 card. I mean, mono-white life gain is currently a tier 1 deck, so this could even be a tier 1 card, actually. The reason I'm going to put this in tier 2 is just because that mono-white life gain also has like very important free drops. We have Heliod, we have Maul of the Skyclays, and we have that Noble that gains life when creatures are attacking. So because of that competition, I'm gonna put this in tier 2 right for now, but I think this even has upside potential, and this is a very strong card. Next I got Dragonkin Berserker, 2 mana 2/2 human berserker in red with first strike, which says both abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control. And you can both for 4 and red to create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. So a really powerful boast ability here. Also, first strike is just really, really nice. And then this passive ability or static effect that both abilities cost 1 less for each dragon you control. Probably pretty irrelevant. I mean, we're getting this, what's it called? Goldwing? Goldspan Wings or something. This new 5 mana 4/4 flying haste dragon, which we certainly see playing standard. So I expect to see some dragons in standard, or this new like Immerstern dragon. So you know, maybe this possibility actually gets used quite a lot, like by 1 or 2 mana. And then you can just make a 5/5 dragon for 3 or 4 mana, which is pretty cool. And yeah, obviously for Berserkers, this is just a go-to card. It's just very solid, 2 mana 2 to first strike. It's nice. Although I want to say this dies to Bonecrusher Storms, which is always bad, but you gotta start somewhere, right? So very solid card. I'm gonna put this at tier 3. I fully expect this to be played. Like in Berserker trial decks for sure. In mono red aggro, I'm not sure actually. Maybe mono red aggro will completely shift with some kind of mini dragon package or with a dwarf package. And then this could see play in there, which could be really cool. But for now, I'm gonna put this in tier 3. But this card just has a lot of utility, you know, especially because of the boast ability. It always gives you this option later in the game to, you know, just put out another big dude on the battlefield, which might eventually just seal the game for you, seal the deal. So, cool, solid card. By the way, I'm not going through all last spoilers here. I'm only going through the ones I found relevant. So, I'm actually not covering some comments or uncommons which I found, you know, relevant. Next, I've got another Simic Uncommon Saga, the 3 seasons. Chapter 1, mill 3 cards. Chapter 2, return up to 2 targets, no permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Chapter 3, choose 3 cards in each graveyard. The owner shuffles those cards into the library. And the card I would like to compare this to is the Binding of the Titans, which is a saga from Fairies Beyond Death. Chapter 1 says each player mills 3 cards. Chapter 2, you can exile up to 2 creature cards from graveyards. For each creature card exiled this way, you gain 1 life. And in Chapter 3, return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, comparing these two, if you're playing like a snow-heavy deck with a lot of snow permanents, then I would say the 3 seasons is probably better because you get 2 snow permanents from your graveyard to your hand, and you already get them back on Chapter 2. So there's actually a lot of value. Also, there seems to be some theme with milling yourself in snow decks, like with the Yorn God we saw, right, which has this scepter that can get your snow permanents back from your graveyard. So that's cool. And then the third ability is probably pretty irrelevant. What could be nice, just, you know, to a little bit, annoy your opponent, is that if you can, for example, choose cards with escape and put them back in your opponent's graveyard so you can't escape them, like a Croxa. Or you can put land cards from the graveyard back into your opponent's deck, because generally speaking, yes, you always want to hit your land draws, but the more the game goes on, the less likely you want it to be to draw a land. So that's a small like disadvantage you can give your opponent. And for yourself, I also don't really find much value in the 3rd chapter. So yeah, what can I say about this card? I think this card can have some play. It has some value, definitely. If you wanna play some kind of mill deck, Binding of Titans might be more relevant because the value is more general. It's not limited to snow permanents. But yeah, I think 3 seasons could see some play in self-mill decks, although there aren't any such decks out there right now, especially because of the rogues, right? Milling yourself is not a good idea right now. And one last thing I wanted to say about this card is this card requires you to play green and blue, and Binding of Titans only requires you to play green. So that's another thing to consider. I would say maybe this is like a tier 4 card. Maybe this could see some fringe play in snow permanent decks that want to use the graveyard and want to have some more value with snow permanent. So maybe it's the thing, but I think this is at max a tier 4 card. Yeah, it's just the thing is the card is fine as it is, but there isn't a deck right now where this necessarily could see play. Next up we got Doomscar. Oh boy. 5 mana in white, so you destroy creatures, no other downsized requirements and so on. And you can foretell for 1 and double white. So you can pay the foretell cost for 2 and then later cast for just 3 mana. This card is tier 1, 100%. It allows you to board wipe on turn 3, issue foretell on 2. And often in a control deck, you either don't do anything on turn 2 or you use a removal spell on turn 2, which you don't need if you're going to board wipe on turn 3. So having a board wipe on turn 3 instead of turn 4 is just so big. And I think this card is going to have a lot of implications for the meta because, I mean, you can just have a deck now if the meta is very creature heavy, where you have 4 Shadow Disguise for Doomscars in your deck, and just, get rid of all your opponent's creatures all the time, on turn 3, on turn 4, no problem. One slight downside this card has is its usual casting cost of 5 mana, which means that if you didn't draw this in your starting hand and you really need a board wipe on like turn 4, if you draw this, if you top deck this, you can cast it. So that's slight downside, but anyway, for me this is definitely a tier 1 card, no doubt about that. Doomscar, tier 1. Next up we got Resplendent Marshal, 3 mana 3/3, another Mythic for white. It's an Age of Warrior flying. And when it enters the battlefield or dies, you may exile another creature card from your graveyard. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control other than Resplendent Marshal that shares a creature type with the exiled card. Now, right away, I'm going to tell you what I think about this card in general. I think this card is pretty much garbage. The ETB effect or the dice effect is actually, or the requirement, so this is actually really big. If you play this on turn 3, basically ETB has no value because either you don't have a creature card in your graveyard, or secondly, think about it, if you have a creature card in your graveyard on turn 3, this means that your opponent killed one of your creatures, and you have at maximum 2 other creatures out, at maximum more likely 2 creatures out with the same creature type. So, if you got super lucky in a way that your opponent killed one of your creatures, you got 2 1-mana creatures out who share a creature type. This enters the battlefield, both of them get a 1/1 counter. Now, is that really exciting? I don't think so. So the requirement is really steep. Later in the game, the effect is fine, but it's if you're later in the game and you still manage to have a white board, you should have won by now. And yeah, it's just, you have to jump through hoops to make this card work, and it's just not that exciting or that great. Where could this card see play? Well, I think this card could actually see play in Angel decks, just because there aren't really a lot of 3-drop Angels right now, except for Righteous Valkyrie. So you might as well just want to fill out the slot with Resplendent Marshal, because why not? It's still a 3 mana 3/3 flyer, and has some occasional value in a tribal deck. So that could be a home, or another thing could be maybe what's it called, maybe in a warrior deck. No, it's a 3-drop, 3 mana, 3/3 flyer. But then again, in a warrior deck, at 3 mana, you want to play so much other stuff. You might want to play more of the Skyclaves or your Kiri. So I think this card is pretty bad. I'm gonna give this actually a tier 3 rating though, just because I think if you want to play Angel Tribal, you probably want to put this in. And I expect Angel Tribal to be a tier 3 deck. I think Angel Tribal seems decent. So, yeah, I think this is like tier 3, tier 4. I really don't like this card. I think it's pretty garbage. And it's even a Mythic. I think this card doesn't deserve a Mythic spot. So, yeah, let's put this at like tier 4, but with tier 3 potential. Next I've got another Mythic in blue, Orvar the All-Form. 4 mana 3/3 shapeshifter changeling. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. And when a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent. Now, this effect is obviously super crazy. You can just, copy any permanent you have, as long as you can target a permanent with instant or sorcery spells. So you can copy lands, you can copy fun enchantments like Outlaw's Merriment, right, to get multiple Outlaw's Merriment. A really fun interaction is with Mythos of Illuna, 4 mana sorcery that lets you create a token of target permanent. If you, have Orvar out and an Outlaw's Merriment out, and you Mythos of Illuna and Outlaw's Merriment, you get double tokens, so... But that's all Magical Christmas land. At the end of the day, while this effect is super strong, I think this just won't make the cut for Standard, because it's a 4 mana 3/3 that does nothing, the turn comes down, and then it has to survive a whole turn. Also 3 toughness, it doesn't die to Storm, but it basically dies to everything else. And yeah, I mean, an idea that I had is like, maybe you could build something like a Simic, Rampy creature deck, but I don't know what kind of instants or sorceries you would put in such a deck that target permanency control to copy your creatures or other permanents. So while this effect is super powerful, I actually don't want to talk too much about this card, because to me it's very obvious that this card won't see play in Standard, except for in Jank decks. So I'm gonna put this in the tier 4 category. It's just that it's way too slow for Standard, and I'm not even sure how you, like, what kind of instant sorcery, or what kind of deck you would want to put this in, right? Maybe like an Izzet Spellslinger deck, where you buff your own creatures, and then because you target your creatures all the time, you copy your creatures, but there's still 4 mana 3/3, does nothing, the turn comes down. So yeah, I think this is like a tier 4 card and might see some play in Jank decks. Alright, next up we got another utility land in all those colors, Great Hall of Sternheim. And you can pay 2 white and a black, sacrifice it, and a creature you control to create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast sorcery. It's just a really good activate ability on a land. For me, it's with most of the other utility lands. I think it's a tier 4 card. This fits nice in cleric tribal decks, where you have small creatures and you want to sacrifice creatures, and then you just get a 4/4 angel for a fair rate, right? Basically, you effectively pay 4 mana and sacrifice your land, getting a 4/4 flyer. It's just a cool fine card, tier 4. Next up, I just wanted to mention this card is Sternheim Corsair, 3 mana 2/2. Flying Pegasus. Artifact and enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Now, this won't see play in Standard, but I just want to mention it because these kind of very broad reduction spells are, I think, always interesting to look out for. This reduces artifact and enchantment spells, and you know, doesn't have restrictions like only orange enchantment spells or something. No, everything. It won't see play because it dies to everything, and there isn't a deck really right now where this, you know, would find a home. But I just wanted to mention it, but let's put it in the tier 5 category. Next I got another saga in the new colors. It's King Narcys Betrayal. It's 3 mana, and the first lore card says each player mills 4 cards. Then you may exile 1 creature or place a card from each graveyard. And chapter 2 and 3, until end of turn, you may cast spells among the cards exiled with King Narcys Betrayal, and spend mana as though it were mana of any color to do so. So, you play this on turn 3, each player mills 4 cards, and the way I understand the card is from each graveyard you can exile 1 creature or planeswalker card, right? So you exile a maximum of 2 cards. Either like 2 cards from your graveyard or 2 cards from your opponent's graveyard or 1 of each. And then on turn, chapter 2 and 3, you may play both of these cards, right? So it's 3 mana, mill each player, and essentially draw 2 cards. And yeah, what do I think about this card? So first thing, or like first downside of this card is you can only play those exiled cards as long as you're in chapter 2 or 3 of the saga, which means you basically can't build your deck in a way that puts high CMC creatures or planeswalker into your deck, because otherwise if you play this on turn 3, it's very likely that you'll hit something that you actually can't play. So that's one thing. The other thing is, or like apart from that, it draws cards from your opponents, which can be cool. And I mean, you can build your deck around this, right? You can mill yourself and then draw 2 cards. But at the end of the day, if you're paying 3 mana to get 2 cards, why not just pay 3 mana to draw 2 cards? I mean, we actually have a card in Standard that draws you 2 mana for 2 cards for 3 mana. Also, there are other options. So even in a mill deck, I don't see this being played. So I like the idea of like, you know, like stealing cards from your opponent. I think that's pretty cool. But because of this restriction that you have to play those cards as long as the saga is on the battlefield, I think this restriction is too high and the benefit is too little, and getting cards in your hand immediately is just better. So because of that, I think it's going to see 0 play. Next up, yeah, all of the last runes got spoiled, and I'm just going to take this rune as an example. So all the runes are, you know, all cards, they all are the same, they all cost 2 mana. You can enchant a permanent. When they enter battlefield, you draw a card, and then they have a certain effect. And you can also have this effect applied to equipment, right? That's the whole deal. So for example, the green one gives a creature +1/+1 and the creature has trample. Or you can equip this rune to an equipment, and then the equipment gives the creature +1/+1 has trample. So what's interesting about this card is you can enchant any permanent. So you can always play these cards to just draw cards for 2 mana. That's pretty interesting. The effects are, you know, pretty neat and everything, but at the end of the day, like a deck this would fit in Standard is something like, you know, where you wanna buff your, what's it called? This gingerbread that has haste and can be unblockable. You know, when you want to pump this up with like auras, etc. That used to be in a deck in Standard, it's not anymore. I think, long story short, these just won't see any play. I think maybe just very fringe play, but I don't think the effects are that relevant. So I'm gonna put this in tier 4 actually for one reason only, and that's because of the next card. It's Rune Force Champion, which has synergies with runes because it says there's a 3 mana 2/3 Dwarf Warrior, and it says when Rune Force Champion enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a rune card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it, and it says you may pay 1 rather than pay the mana cost for rune spells you cast. So this Rune Forge champion gets you a card from basically anywhere, from library or graveyard, which is big, which is pretty cool. And then reduces the casting cost of those runes by 1, regardless of the color. So the cool thing about this, for example, if you were in like a mono white deck, you could even put green runes in there. This would tutor them up, and you could play them because they cost 1 generic, right? So then you pay 1 generic for a card that draws you a card and has an effect on one of your creatures, which is pretty efficient. It's a dwarf, which is relevant, but while I think that this card is, it's a solid card, it also has 3 toughness, doesn't die to storm or anything. I just think that runes seem really, really weak and won't see any play. So I think there's going to be some experimentations. I'm going to put this in tier 4, but I don't think it's going to see any play. Next I've got Icebreaker Kraken. It's a 12 mana 8/8 snow creature Kraken, and says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each snow land you control. And when Icebreaker Kraken enters the battlefield, artifacts and creatures target opponent controls don't untap during that player's next untap step. And activate ability, return 3 snowlands you control to the owner's hand. Return Icebreaker Kraken to its owner's hand. Straight up, I think this card is garbage. The earliest you can play this is when you have 6 land on the battlefield. 6 snowlands, because then this costs 6 mana and you have 6 mana. Then you can play a 6 mana 8/8. And then your opponent's artifacts and creatures don't untap. But note, they have to be tapped already. This doesn't tap the creatures for you, or those artifacts. So that's the downside. And then the activated ability is a huge home run for your opponent, because your opponent is surely happy to see you go 3 turns back in time, having 3 lands less. So I think this card is just absolutely terrible and it won't see any play. It's a tier 5 card. And last 2 cards, I just want to mention this one, Deviating the Realm. 2 mana instant in blue, return time non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So very generic rate for this kind of effect. And you can foretell it for 1 blue. Just want to mention it, another foretell card. I think we have just too many better cards like Brazen Borer that this could see play, or even like, what's it called? Something with the Royal, which has the same effect, but you can kick it to draw a card. So I just want to mention it, but it won't see any play in Standard. And then the last card to talk about in the whole Kaldheim spoiler season is Vengeful Reaper, 4-mana 2/3 Angel Cleric with Flying, Death Touch, and Haste. And you can foretell for 1 in black. So, yeah, I think it's actually a decent angel if you foretell it. Because Haste is real nice, Flying is obviously nice. The Death Touch is fine, but it's not really relevant, because if it has Haste, you want to attack right away, which means it's going to be tapped. So you won't block with it, and this card would be real nice with Flying, Lifelink, Haste, but that's just not the card. So I think it's just another angel to keep in mind when building your angel decks. Probably won't see any play because you have too many other alternatives, and if you want for play this is actually pretty mana inefficient. So I think it's going to see 0 play actually. 0 play, maybe a tier 4 card. Maybe a tier 4 card in Angel Tribal, but I doubt it actually. I mean, it's got haste, it can help you get those last 2 damage in, but Angel Tribal I think wants to be aggressive, and I've already just, Fury crafted an Angel Tribal deck, and it actually has a very nice curve, so it doesn't need this Angel, so I think it's a tier 5 card, but I just wanted to mention it. And yeah, with that last card, that was the whole Kaldheim spoiler season. Really enjoyed making this video. Hope you enjoyed those too. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I see you guys soon with more videos to come. And it's only 8 days left until Kaldheim, so stay tuned.